Welcome back. Okay, so we have our basic design development drawings set up, but what about additional drawings that we might need to produce? Well, obviously this will vary depending on the type of project you're working on and your local planning or building authority requirements. However, one which I have personally come across a lot are shadow study drawings, and these are remarkably easy to produce in SketchUp. Let me show you how. If we start with our DD site model here, which has the DD building model loading into it, we're going to need to create a few extra scenes. Quite a few extra scenes as it happens. For this reason, I typically like to save a copy of this model and call it DD Sun Study. So let's do that now. You might not want to do this, and that's fine, but for me, I prefer not to have endless lists of scenes in a model, so it makes sense to kind of batch things out in this way. The building model is referenced into this model, so if anything changes in the design of the building, I can simply update the reference as we did before. The site model itself is unlikely to change. Okay, let's create our sun study scenes. So in the scenes dialog, I want to keep my working model scene and my DD roof plan scene, but I can delete everything else. So for my sun studies, I need to be able to compare the existing situation when the site is empty with the proposed situation when my design is placed on the site. I also need to be able to compare this situation at different times of the year and different times of the day. It sounds like a lot of work, but SketchUp makes it really easy. So let's start with the roof plan or site plan that we've already got set up. Before we start, it's important to check the project is correctly geolocated. If you go right down here to the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see if I hover over this icon, it says this model is accurately geolocated. Alternatively, you can go to Window, Model Info, and this will tell you the geographical location that you have assigned. If you need to set a geolocation for your site, then do that now. Go back to the pre-design module of the course if you don't remember how to do that. Okay, so our model is accurately geolocated. Let's set up the first scene. Let's rename this scene EX for existing December 21st, 9 a.m. I'll explain what this all means in a moment. I also want to turn on my contour lines and my terrain. And I just want to edit this terrain because I think the green's a bit too much for this drawing. So if I double click in here to open this group, and with the bucket tool, I can select color. Let's just make it slightly off gray. I also want to have the boundary lines back on. So in terms of the number of scenes that we need to create, this again varies depending on the purpose and the intended audience for these drawings. But the industry standard for shadow studies in Australia is usually to show the full spectrum of shadows from the longest to the shortest. Therefore, we have to look at what happens at the summer solstice, the equinox, and the winter solstice, which is the 21st of December, the 21st of March, and the 21st of June, respectively. Obviously, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, then this will be reversed. I usually also have to, at a minimum, display the shadow situation at 9 a.m., 12 noon, and 3 p.m. on each of these days. Again, it sounds like a lot of work, but it really isn't once we get going. So for the first scene, I don't really need to see the entirety of the site. I'm more interested in the shadows that will be cast on or by my project and the adjacent buildings. So let's zoom the camera in a little bit like this. Right click and update that scene. Okay, so now I want to set the shadows up. So let's go to Window, Shadows. The first thing to check is that the time zone is consistent with the geolocation. Sometimes this isn't right. So for Australia, I'm on UTC plus 10. If you don't know what your time zone is in UTC, just simply Google it. We can toggle shadows on and off by clicking on this icon here. Obviously, we want shadows on. Then we simply set the date and the time that we need. So we want December the 21st, and we also want 9 a.m. Simply a case of typing these things in, and there are our shadows. Also check that you've got Use Sun for Shading ticked. And we also want to cast shadows on faces and on the ground. Now we can right click and update this scene. You can adjust the darkness of the shadows if you like. I'm quite happy with this setup. Okay, so the last thing for this scene, this is going to display the existing condition. So I want to hide my building model. So it's simply a case of hiding the 00 building tag over here, then update the scene to save the changes. That's the hard work pretty much done now, believe it or not. All that remains is to create new scenes for each of the conditions and adjust the shadow settings and tag visibility accordingly. So if I create a new scene based on this one, and I call that one PR for proposed, December 21st, 9 a.m. Okay. All I have to do on this scene is turn my buildings tag back on to show the proposed condition, and then simply right click to update that scene. Hopefully you get the idea. I can repeat this now for 12 noon and 3 p.m. for the same day, and then repeat those again for the other 2 days of the year. It's simply just a case of adjusting these settings and saving the scene. Welcome back, and here you can see now I have all my scenes set up for both the existing and proposed conditions. You see there's quite a few for December the 21st, March the 21st and June the 21st, both at 9 a.m, 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. If I scroll through some of them, you'll see that all that changes are the date and time and the visibility of the building, whether it's an existing or proposed. This is really quick and easy to do once you have the first scene set up. Okay, so now I'm ready to head over to layout. So here we are back in layout with our DD drawing set open. Now, depending on the number of drawings you already have set up, I typically like to create a separate layout file for the shadow studies, just to keep things neat and to keep the file sizes down. I've already got 11 pages in this set. Alternatively, you could tag them onto the end of the earlier drawings. That's entirely up to you. So now that I've got a copy of this file, I've called it DD Sun Study, I can start setting up my Sun Study pages. I've retained the site plan page, but I've deleted all of the others. Let's rename this page for the time being and call it Shadow Studies 21st of December, 9 a.m. I also want to change the title block and give these drawings an S prefix for Shadow Studies. So in here, if I double click and just change this from A1 to S1. So I'm just going to select a few of these things here that I want to keep. So title boundary and the names of the properties. So I'm just going to Command C to copy those. And then I can delete everything else. Okay, so now we're ready to start our drawings. So we need to bring in our Shadow Studies model. So if we go to File, Insert, and then choose my DD Sun Study model, click Open, we get the last saved view. So up here in the SketchUp model dialog, let's set the scene to our very first existing conditions, December 21st at 9 a.m. Okay, so I want to be able to compare the existing and proposed conditions side by side on the same drawing. So let's just adjust the frame for this viewport so that I can get, so that it's wide enough I can get two on the page. Now I've got that scene set up, I want to quickly add those notes back in to denote the boundaries and the properties. Obviously, normally I leave that to the end, but for something like this where there's a lot of repetition, it pays to do it now. Okay, so you'll notice I've quickly just put that text back in that denotes the adjacent properties and some of the boundaries on this image. So now what I can do is if I select all of this, the text and the viewports and this drawing tag that I've just added, I can just drag that across and hold down Option to create a copy. And I'll just place that on the other side of the drawing like so. Now all I need to do is just select this viewport and change that to the proposed condition. And there we have it. I'm going to update this to say proposed condition and just change that reference. So to create the remainder of the sheets, we simply make duplicates of this page for each date and time, and then change the SketchUp scenes and drawing tags accordingly. So I'll go away now and quickly do that, and I'll see you back here in a few minutes. Okay, so fast forwarded again, and here you can see I have all my Shadow Studies drawings set up, 3 for each date, December, March, and June. So the summer solstice, the equinox, and the winter solstice, as well as 3 times for each day. Flicking through them like this, Hopefully you can start to appreciate how easy it would also be to set up an animation for this stuff in SketchUp if you wanted to, but I'll leave you to explore that yourself for another time. So that's it for my shadow studies drawings. Join me in the next lesson where we'll look at another useful drawing to produce, demolition plans. See you there.